In the tech world, every year is supposed to be about progress. Faster processors, smarter software, sleeker interfaces, and tighter security are the promises that keep users upgrading and companies investing. But what if 2026 becomes the year when all those expectations collide with reality? What if the world's most widely used desktop operating system finds itself squeezed by regulation, competition, economic pressure, artificial intelligence, disruption, and its own strategic decisions? Today we're diving deep into why 2026 might be Windows' worst year yet, and how a perfect storm of forces could challenge even a giant like Microsoft in ways we haven't seen in decades. To understand why 2026 could be such a difficult year, we need to look at the pressure building from multiple directions at once. For years, Windows has maintained its dominance in desktop computing thanks to legacy enterprise trust and sheer market inertia. Businesses rely on decades-old software. Schools deploy it because of familiarity. Gamers stick with it because of compatibility, but dominance can create complacency, and complacency can be dangerous in a rapidly shifting technological landscape. One of the biggest challenges looming over Windows in 2026 is the accelerating shift toward AI-first computing. The past few years have seen artificial intelligence move from a cloud-based novelty to a deeply embedded feature in operating systems. Microsoft has heavily invested in AI integration, embedding assistants and copilots directly into the Windows experience. On paper, this seems like a forward-looking move. In reality, it risks alienating users who feel overwhelmed by constant AI prompts, background processes, and cloud dependencies. If AI features become mandatory rather than optional, backlash could grow. Many users already express frustration about features they didn't ask for being baked into core work. If 2026 brings deeper AI integration that increases system resource usage, requires constant internet connectivity, or introduces new subscription tiers, it could intensify resentment among both casual and professional users. Another issue is hardware requirements. Recent Windows versions have steadily raised the bar for supported CPUs, security chips, and firmware standards. While these requirements improve security on paper, they also render millions of perfectly functional machines obsolete overnight. In 2026, as more legacy devices reach the end of support, consumers and small businesses may face a painful choice: upgrade hardware during uncertain economic conditions or migrate to alternative platforms. Forced upgrades rarely generate goodwill. If large numbers of users feel abandoned, especially in developing markets, Windows could lose not just devices but long-term loyalty. Enterprise customers present a different but equally serious challenge. Businesses crave stability. They want predictable updates, minimal disruption, and long-term support cycles. However, the modern Windows update cadence has become increasingly complex. Feature updates, security patches, driver conflicts, and firmware requirements all create friction. If 2026 sees a major update that introduces compatibility problems with widely used enterprise software, the consequences could ripple across industries. A single high-profile failure affecting healthcare, finance, or government agencies could erode trust that took decades to build. Security is another double-edged sword. Windows has historically been a prime target for malware due to its popularity. Microsoft has improved security dramatically, implementing hardware-based protections, virtualization security, and zero-trust models. But attackers evolve just as quickly. The rise of AI-driven malware, automated phishing campaigns, and ransomware as a service platforms could push Windows security infrastructure to its limits in 2026. If a widespread exploit targets a core Windows component, the reputational damage could be immense. Even if patches are released quickly, headlines matter. Public perception often lags behind technical nuance. Regulation may be an even bigger factor. Governments around the world are increasingly scrutinizing large technology firms in the European market. The European Union has already introduced sweeping digital market regulations aimed at limiting anti-competitive behavior and ensuring interoperability. If Windows is required to unbundle key services, allow alternative app stores, or open deeper system-level access to competitors, it could weaken the tightly integrated ecosystem that Microsoft has spent years building. Compliance could introduce fragmentation, while non-compliance could lead to heavy fines. Either outcome adds friction. Across the Atlantic, regulatory pressure is also mounting. The United States has signaled increasing concern about tech monopolies. Agencies such as the Federal Trade Commission have shown a willingness to challenge large platform owners. If Windows is perceived as unfairly favoring bundled services, subscription offerings, or proprietary integrations, 2026 could bring investigations or restrictions that alter the business model. Legal battles drain resources and distract leadership from innovation. Competition, meanwhile, has become more credible than ever. For years, Windows' primary desktop rival was macOS, but the performance gap and price barriers limited its reach. That equation shifted dramatically when Apple transitioned its computers to custom silicon. The performance per watt improvements stunned the industry, and user satisfaction climbed. If Apple continues iterating at its current pace through 2026, creative professionals and developers may increasingly migrate away from Windows machines. The shift may not be explosive, but slow erosion can be just as damaging over time. At the same time, Google has steadily expanded its presence in education and lightweight computing. Chromebooks, once dismissed as glorified browsers, have matured into capable devices for cloud-centric work. If 2026 brings even deeper integration between browser productivity tools and offline capabilities, Windows could find itself squeezed at both ends of the market. Premium users drawn to Apple's hardware-software integration and budget-conscious institutions opting for cloud-native simplicity. The gaming ecosystem, long considered Windows Fortress, also faces subtle shifts. Cloud gaming services continue to mature, reducing dependence on local hardware power. If high-quality streaming becomes viable even on low-end devices, the importance of owning a powerful Windows gaming PC diminishes. Meanwhile, console ecosystems and cross-platform engines reduce exclusivity. Windows will likely remain central to PC gaming in 2026, but its grip may loosen enough to chip away at one of its strongest selling points. Another looming challenge is subscription fatigue. Over the past decade, software has steadily shifted toward recurring revenue models. Productivity suites, cloud storage, security tools, and even certain system features increasingly tie into subscriptions. Users are growing wary of paying monthly fees for functionality that once came bundled with their operating system. If Windows in 2026 further intertwines core features with paid services, backlash could intensify. The perception that the operating system is merely a gateway to upsells could damage brand perception. Public perception matters more than ever in the social media age. A single controversial update, privacy misstep, or intrusive feature can spark viral outrage. Windows has already faced criticism for telemetry collection and data sharing. Even if practices are transparent and anonymized, skepticism remains. In 2026, privacy expectations will be even higher. If competitors position themselves as more privacy-respecting alternatives, Windows may struggle to defend its data strategies, especially in regions with strict privacy regulations. Internal strategy decisions could also play a role. Leadership vision shapes platform direction, and under CEO Microsoft has pivoted strongly toward cloud services and enterprise solutions. While this strategy has boosted revenue, it may shift focus away from the everyday consumer desktop experience. If Windows becomes secondary to cloud-first initiatives, consumer users may feel neglected. A platform thrives when its community feels heard and valued. Neglect breeds migration. Economic conditions in 2026 could amplify all these factors. If global markets slow or inflation persists, consumers delay hardware upgrades, businesses freeze IT budgets. When money tightens, experimentation declines, and risk tolerance shrinks. An operating system that demands new hardware or pushes premium features during an economic downturn may face pushback. Cost-sensitive customers might explore free alternatives more seriously than they would in boom times. Fragmentation is another subtle but powerful risk. Windows supports an enormous diversity of hardware configurations. That flexibility is a strength, but it also creates complexity. As chip architectures evolve and new AI accelerators enter the market, maintaining seamless compatibility becomes harder. If 2026 introduces a transitional period with mixed architectures, driver inconsistencies, or performance disparities, user frustration could spike. Smooth transitions are rare in computing history. Developers play a crucial role as well. If developers perceive that building native Windows applications is less profitable or more cumbersome than targeting web platforms, investment shifts accordingly. Progressive web apps, cross-platform frameworks, and cloud-hosted services reduce dependence on any single operating system. If the most innovative tools in 2026 launch first on web or alternative platforms, Windows risks appearing like a legacy environment rather than a cutting-edge one. Education trends could further influence perception. Younger generations raised on tablets and cloud collaboration tools may view traditional desktop environments as outdated. If Windows fails to evolve its user experience to feel intuitive for touch-first or hybrid work, it may struggle to capture new lifelong users. Brand loyalty often forms early. Losing the classroom can mean losing the future workforce. Another wildcard is geopolitical tension. Supply chain disruptions, trade restrictions, or semiconductor shortages could affect device availability and pricing. If Windows certified hardware becomes more expensive or harder to obtain in certain regions, alternative ecosystems might fill the gap. Political pressure can also influence procurement decisions for government institutions, especially if local software initiatives gain traction. There is also the issue of update fatigue. Over the past decade, operating systems have transitioned from static releases to rolling updates. While this improves security, it also creates a sense of constant change. Many users simply want stability. If 2026 brings another radical interface redesign or workflow shift, backlash could echo the negative reactions seen in previous controversial UI overhauls. Familiarity is comfort, and comfort builds loyalty. Environmental concerns could enter the conversation as well. Forcing hardware upgrades due to strict system requirements raises questions about electronic waste. Sustainability is becoming a priority for governments and consumers alike. If Windows policies are perceived as accelerating device obsolescence, critics may frame it as environmentally irresponsible, adding reputational risk. The enterprise cloud paradox also looms large. As more workloads move to cloud-hosted, virtual desktops and browser-based apps, the importance of the local operating system diminishes. If employees spend most of their day inside a browser connected to remote infrastructure, the underlying OS becomes less relevant. In such a world, the competitive advantage of Windows narrows. Even branding could influence 2026's narrative. If messaging around Windows feels reactive rather than visionary, public sentiment may shift. Tech history shows that perception of momentum can matter as much as actual market share. Once a platform is labeled as declining, even unfairly, that narrative can become self-fulfilling. None of these challenges alone guarantees disaster. Windows remains deeply entrenched, financially supported, and globally recognized. But 2026 could represent a convergence point where incremental frustrations become collective dissent. Raised hardware requirements, AI overreach, regulatory constraints, rising competition, subscription fatigue, security scares, economic strain, and shifting user behavior might all peak simultaneously. The worst year for a platform is rarely defined by a single catastrophic failure. More often, it is defined by erosion, a gradual loss of enthusiasm, a steady migration of developers, a subtle decline in. If headlines in 2026 focus more on alternatives than innovations within Windows, that narrative shift alone could mark a turning point. And yet, there is an important counterpoint. Microsoft has survived existential threats before. It navigated the browser wars, the mobile collapse, and the rise of cloud computing by reinventing itself. If 2026 becomes a wake-up call, it could also become a catalyst for the same pressures that threaten dominance can spark transformation. Still, the road ahead looks complicated. Technology cycles are accelerating, user expectations are rising, governments are watching closely, competitors are stronger than they have been in years. The margin for error is shrinking. If Windows stumbles at the wrong moment, recovery may be harder than in previous decades. So when we ask whether 2026 might be Windows' worst year yet, we are really asking whether a legacy titan can adapt quickly enough to a world that no longer guarantees loyalty by default. The answer will depend on execution, listening to users, balancing innovation with stability, and resisting the temptation to monetize at the expense of experience. In the end, platforms rise and fall not just on technical merit but on trust. If users trust that their devices will remain secure, performant, affordable, and respectful of their privacy, they stay. If that trust weakens, alternatives flourish. The coming years will test that trust in unprecedented ways. Whether 2026 becomes a crisis or merely a challenging chapter will depend on decisions being made right now. But the warning signs are real, the competition is fierce, and the environment is unforgiving. For the first time in a long time, Windows cannot rely solely on inertia. It must prove its value all over again in a computing landscape that is evolving faster than ever before.